Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wazadome TV. Today, I have a very, very special guest. I'm very excited about this one. I have some great thinkers, some great researchers, and some good friends of mine from the Gullah House podcast. Man, we have Chief Fode, we have Baba Chemo, and my brother Dominique. And so we're going to have a powerful and dynamic discussion about Gullah and Geechee history, doing your ancestry, slavery in the Carolinas, and connections with Africa. And before we get started, I just kind of wanted to let everybody know who may not be familiar with the Gullah House show. It is really one of my favorite shows on YouTube. It's a show that is serious about African history, serious about African American history, showing cultural retentions. They have this conversations about, how to do your ancestry, right? And also give you context of not just historical figures, within um, our history and the history of the area, but the history of the actual area itself to paint a bigger picture and a broader picture of the time our ancestors lived in. And so before we even get started, I want you guys to hit the link in the description and subscribe to the Gullah House show. Again, it's one of my favorites on YouTube. And so, with that said, for everybody again who may not be familiar with you guys, um, I want you guys to introduce yourselves. We can start with you, Dominique, since you're at the top. You on mute.
Yes, what's up, everybody? My name is Dominic Holiday. I am over the education department for Gonona, the Gullah Nation of North America. And I'm a young historian and researcher, man. I've been at this now for 9 years.
Wow. Wow. Um, Baba Kimo.
Okay, I am Baba Chemo, Vice President and Chief Elder of Gonona. I've been doing research for a very, very long time, very long time. I just got really deep within the last few years, but this is what we do, man. We do our lineage and history work just about every day.
Indeed, indeed. Chief Fode.
Yeah, man. My name is Mansa Fode Jamu, Chief of the Gullah Nation of North America. I also serve as the Executive Director of the Gullah Nation of North America.
Indeed, indeed. So before we get into some of the deeper stuff, can you talk about why did you guys decide to create the Gullah House show and what was the intention behind it?
Yeah, sure. Kimo?
Well, Fode, my cousin Fode, we started this together a few years ago. We wanted to spread the knowledge, spread the history, share our lineage with the people, and we did it to further connect with others in the diaspora, and we brought Dominique in. Dominique has been a dynamic researcher for us and everything, man, and we just love doing this. We love sharing our history
Yeah,
and knowledge with the people.
absolutely. In addition to that, we're building an organization. We're building a movement.
Mhm.
And so anytime we create a social media platform, it's to engage the people. It's to share ideals, extend our platform and just build ultimately. But when we created the Gullah House show, it was created within the context of a project that we started. The project that we started was the Orangeburg Gullah Geechee Heritage Project.
Mm.
Um, there was a lot of people who didn't know anything about the heritage of Gullah Geechee people in Orangeburg. And because of where it's located, people challenged the ideal. But of course, we were researchers. So we did the research and we wanted to create a platform where we can have those discussions with other researchers and exchange information. So I think that really brought about the Gullah House show. 2.5 years now, we've been rocking.
So let's kind of tap into that just for a little bit. Gullah heritage in Orangeburg, and you said that many people felt like there wasn't any, right? And this project was here to show and prove that they were incorrect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a matter of perception. Um, Historically, it's been the Eurocentric philosophers and anthropologists and historians that have come down into South Carolina and gone to the most remote areas and said, this is what Gullah Geechee is. They have only looked at the language and the cultural aspects and the most isolated and reserved forms. But they never took note of the migrations of our people. They never took note of the various genealogical connections that exist between the people of Orangeburg and the people of the Low Country. You understand? So I think there was some miseducation or some facts left out, either deliberately or not so. But we had to fill the void. We had to really show people the different connections that Orangeburg has, not only to Gullah Geechee people and culture, but to the history of preservation.
Mm, indeed, indeed. What are so I guess on your own personal journeys, right, of uncovering your ancestry and doing that research, what are some of the things that you feel like it's brought to you, I guess spiritually?
Mm, that's a good question.
That's a good
Baba?
question.
Yeah, that is. I mean, me myself personally, the way we're able to find things is if as if it's like there's a spirit is guiding us. Would
Mm,
y'all two agree? Like spirit is guiding us almost, man, because we're finding things that have not been documented in books yet.
mm, wow.
We're hearing stories that haven't been really spoken about yet. Like nobody has really connected the dots the way us three have. That's why I always love to say we are Lorenzo Dow Turner's legacy.
Mm, mm. And
So,
who is that, if you don't mind explaining to the people?
Man, so I'm gonna let you take that.
Lorenzo Doe Turner, Dr. Lorenzo Doe Turner, he is the first professor or let me say master of linguistics, African American. He was trained, and ultimately he's considered the father of Gullah Geechee studies because in 1929 he went to South Carolina State University, located in Orangeburg, and that's where he first heard the language in Orangeburg. He didn't hear the language in Charleston first.
Wow.
He didn't hear the language in the Sea Islands first. He
Hmm.
heard the language in Orangeburg first,
Hmm.
and then he went on 20 years of study that resulted in the Africanisms in Gullah studies, in Gullah dialect. So he is the father of the studies that lead to us reclaiming our identity.
Mm, indeed. When you speak of language, is is it considered is like the Gullah dialect? Is it considered under the AAVE umbrella?
I think it would be considered like a
Mm,
pro,
hmm.
proto AAVE. AAVE is a product of Gullah Geechee Creole.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, exactly right.
So whenever, and I guess whatever the context, whenever you hear the phrase Gullah Geechee, what what are what are things that come to your mind as far as who and what Gullah Geechee people and culture represent?
Let me get this to you, man, because you asked a question too about the spiritual aspect of doing the work that we do, right?
Hmm.
There is a spiritual aspect because we start this from the words of our ancestors, our mothers, our grandmothers, the people who we love. So the origination of our identity is our cultural experience at home. That's
Mm,
that's the number one way that we knew as we studied Gullah Geechee culture that hey, my mama do this. Hey,
hmm.
we did this in my family. Hey, my granddaddy talking like that.
Hmm.
So it was that early experience right there. So a lot of those elders are gone now.
Yeah.
And so we're maintaining a spiritual connection with them by continuing this work
Mm,
because it's information that they didn't have to give us that we have that ultimately was the seed for the for the whole family tree that we've been able to bring back into existence. People don't know really who they're related to.
right.
And we've been able to do a lot of that work for our own families and ultimately for other families as well. So it is spiritual. It's very spiritually liberating. We talk about African veneration. How can you venerate your ancestors if you don't know them? If you
Hmm.
can't call their names, if you don't know what they did. I have an ancestor who was a blacksmith. I have another one who fought in the Civil War, right? These aspects of what make us who we are that we don't have knowledge of. It's very empowering. It's very empowering. You know, you don't have to go outside of yourself. You don't have to go into any academic space to appreciate your ancestry.
Hmm.
You just have to have knowledge of your genealogy.
I think that's something Dominique said that kind of stuck with me is that, hey, y'all are finding stuff out that is not documented in books right now, right? And this history that is a lot of times spread from mouth to ear, the African way, right? Is not always something that you can find uh, within, mainstream academic narratives. And
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing for people to keep in mind. Baba
Um,
Kimo, what does? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, real quick, just
Mhm.
just to the other thing that you said. You asked, what do we think when like Gullah Geechee? When I hear Gullah Geechee, I just think I feel the same way that a Zulu would
Mm,
feel when
mhm,
he hear the word Zulu. When
mhm,
a Yoruba person hears the word Yoruba, that's how I feel. Gullah Geechee is my ethnic group.
mhm,
Gullah Geechee is who I am, is what I am. So when I hear it, it automatically has something to do with me and
mhm.
my people and my family. So I identify with it strongly.
Indeed.
As for me, I was born into it without even really knowing exactly what a Gullah Geechee was until I
Mm,
got older. And then when I started researching and examining for myself, I said to myself, well, Papa Joe, my grandfather, did
Mhm.
this. My grandmother did this. I was born into it, man. I heard the stories on the front porch, sitting with my grandparents, sitting with other men and women in the community. And when I first time I heard the word Geechee, Gullah Geechee. Well, Geechee, really, I was about 10 years old.
mm.
And I had just moved up to New York. And that was the first thing them boys up there had called me. They say, oh, he a country boy. He a Geechee from down south. And then my cousins would say, yeah, we eat rice all the time. We do
Mm.
this and that. But actually, I was born into it without actually even knowing what the
Wow.
term meant. It was just something that was just a part of me.
Right. Right. Indeed. Indeed. And so when we talk about Orangeburg, right? Can you go into a little bit more of, I guess, especially for people who may not be even familiar with the geography of Low Country and how a lot of Gullah research has been limited to just Low Country, and what
Yeah,
you guys are actually saying by, hey, there is Gullah ancestry here in Orangeburg too.
absolutely. Absolutely. Can I take that on, y'all?
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead, man.
Chief.
I'll pick up after
All
you.
right, all right, for sure. So, first of all, we're looking at the geography of what they call the Low Country. Even if you text, even if you go to the South Carolina government site and you go to the segment where they have Low Country, Orangeburg is included.
Mm,
First of all.
hmm.
Secondly, the reason why Orangeburg is included is because the Low Country, as a geographical space, goes all the way to what they call the Appalachian Fall Line. The fall line is far inland from the coast. And so
Hmm.
you have the coastal region, and then you have a region that sits behind the coast. They used to call it the back country.
Mm,
It's still the low country,
hmm.
but it's more inland. And so their dominant water is not the ocean.
Hmm.
Their dominant water is the swamps and the rivers,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
And so that's the relationship. You have the coast and the sea islands, and then right behind the coast, you have what they call inland, right?
Hmm.
Orangeburg is situated right in the inland. Today they call it the Midlands,
Hmm.
but it's situated right there in the inland region or area of the Low Country. Geographically, that's true about Orangeburg. It technically is the Low Country.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Secondly, the rivers of South Carolina. You have a river system that runs down from that fall line that I'm talking about, and all those rivers empty out into the Atlantic Ocean. Talking about the Santee, the Combahee, the Edisto, which is the river that they took our ancestors from Charleston, from the Atlantic Ocean, up in order to populate the Africans there. So the connection was direct. Before they had roads and rail, they had to use the rivers. And so the rivers that they use ultimately is what took people up into the inland, away from the
Mm.
coast. It was the same Africans, the Europeans who first owned land at the Low Country in the 1730s. In 1670, Charleston was established. In the 1730s, there was a governor named Middleton, and he created what they call a township plan. He created new townships, so he expanded the territory of Carolina beyond the Low Country.
Mm.
I mean, beyond the coastal area to the inlands. And Orangeburg was one of the main township that was established, and it actually bordered Charleston. You can jump over into Charleston and jump over into Orangeburg back then on the
Mm-hmm.
maps. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's been a lot of maps changing, counties changing. So now when you look at it, it looks like it's a completely different place.
Right.
You don't realize that these people were literally enslaved together. And some people from the coast moved inland by force during slavery and then voluntarily after slavery. And even today, you have people moving from the Low Country inland to Orangeburg today.
Wow.
And to
Dominique.
coincide with what he's saying, most of those counties that we have the data are inland or considered inland, were all part of the historical Orangeburg district: Bamberg, Barnwell, Aiken, Calhoun,
Mm-hmm.
Allendale. All of that was the historical district until 1800, when those places began to split up and form their own districts.
Mm.
So
So this and so is is the idea as far as like Orangeburg and those districts that you were just talking about, Dominique? You know how we have again some people, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but of how they are under the idea that us as African people, once we got here to America, like we ceased being African, right? Is the
yeah,
same is it the same premise with some people when they say, hey, when those Geechee came from low country into Orangeburg, then they cease being Geechee now.
yeah. I was exactly along those lines, man. And it's foolish
Exactly.
because we, from our own lived experiences, oral accounts, and what we found, that's not true.
Right.
It's
Right.
not true. There's some of the same cultural continuities that can be found in the Low Country and Sea Islands were practiced and continued in the Upper Low Country, as I love to say.
Hmm. Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not only that, but it's documented that
Yeah,
Orange had a Gullah Geechee culture. That Bowman, South Carolina, and Orangeburg used to be a rice country.
Wow.
That we grew rice up in Orangeburg. You know, there some of the most famous photos of people still growing rice into the 1900s is in Orangeburg. So
on my family land in which I'm living, we grew rice.
Wow.
exactly.
So can y'all talk to the people about the connection between Rice, South Carolina, Gullah Nation? Because I think it's extremely important.
Yeah, yeah. So, Baba Kimo, you want to touch on that?
Well, rice was well. First of all, they brought us here because of our knowledge of rice, of our knowledge of agriculture. That was the main reason they brought us here to grow the economy and to build these plantations and everything. Say the question again.
No, just the connection and the I guess the connection and importance of rice and
Yeah,
Gullah culture and just the history behind it.
Man, that's you want to take that, Chief?
yeah. I can touch on it. Let me touch on it. Let me touch on it. So, there's a book called The Gullah Geechee Rice and Mosquito Connection.
Mm,
And the reason why it's talking about rice and mosquito is because it was the rice and the mosquito that created the conditions for the Gullah Geechee culture to emerge in Carolina in the first place. So first of all, where do you get the rice from? There's only two original seeds of rice that was cultivated on this earth. One was in Asia, the other one was in West Africa.
wow.
And it was cultivated by people who spoke the Manding language. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. So throughout the Manding speaking region, or what we would say the former Mali Empire region, from Senegal all the way down to about Liberia, all the way inland till you probably reach about Niger.
Mm,
You had this empire. It wasn't 6 and 7 countries like it is now. It was the same people, right?
hmm.
And so within there, rice was their staple. Everybody ate rice. That's what they ate. That's what they grew. They mastered it. They can grow it along the rivers. They can grow it along the coast. They can grow it in the swamp. And they created a whole bunch of advanced engineering techniques in order to do that. So
Hmm.
they know how to do. They know how to do hydroponics. They know
Mm,
how to do tidal wave cultivation. They know how to do different ways of growing rice. So there was two forms of rice growing that became very popular in South Carolina. One was the tidal rice plantation. The other one was what they called the inland plantation, which used the swamp water, the captured waters that was already naturally captured to water the rice. And so um, the key thing about rice is that in 1670, when the Europeans came from Barbados originally and established Carolina, they didn't have a cash crop. They didn't just come and start farming right away.
Hmm.
When they got there, the first thing they had to do was settle themselves.
Yeah.
So the Africans they brought from Barbados was used to clear out Charleston, to build the roads, build the first homes, to set the colony. But by 1690, they was looking for cash crops, something that they could grow that could bring wealth to the colony and to the colonists. And so they realized that rice was a favorite among the enslaved Africans, and that they knew how to grow it. Europeans didn't have much knowledge of it, so it became a newly introduced thing to Europeans like that. But
Hmm.
even if you look, it became very popular among the enslaved Africans, not only in America, but also in the Caribbean, where you have the Latin Americans. They love rice, but no one
Yeah.
talked about where the rice came from, right? So Carolina had the conditions with its rivers, with its environment, to create a model of rice plantation system that was already here in this region of West Africa, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Senegambia, all these places. They already had these techniques. So they came here and took us for our skills.
Hmm.
They didn't take us to America and teach us how to plant rice. They took us to America and we taught them how to plant rice.
Right.
They took us
Right.
to America and they couldn't lord over us and whip us all day because they didn't know how to produce what we was producing. They had to sit down and let us do our thing. Secondly, the rice areas of West Africa are also malaria prone. They full with tropical diseases, yellow fever, malaria. So the people in this region have a high um,
Tolerance.
protection against it, right?
Mm.
Like like you might get sick, but you're not gonna die.
Right.
But they used to call Freetown, Sierra Leone, the white man's grave because once they got malaria, it was over for them,
Wow.
right? So the white man really had a problem with that. He really couldn't breathe the same air as us in those kind of areas. He had to keep a distance.
Hmm.
And so for several months a year during the rain seasons, the Europeans who held our ancestors enslaved on rice plantations in South Carolina and Georgia, they would leave those plantations and go to the cities. They would leave us on those plantations alone, either with black leadership or
Hmm.
maybe some white leadership. But nevertheless, we would be into a task system where we already knew how to do what we knew how to do, and when we was done, we could take the day off and do whatever else we want to do. So in that time, we was able to preserve our cultural arts. We was able to dance
Mm.
and sing and
Right.
knit blanket, and do the things and preserve culture that other
Mhm.
people, like in Virginia, wasn't able to do. They
That's
had
deep.
sun up to sundown. I could get done by 3 o'clock and then go work on a gift for my mother.
Hmm. Hmm. That's deep. That's deep. And it's through that, for them leaving, through in those rain seasons, it allowed us to preserve more of our culture than um, maybe in North Carolina or Virginia. And Baba Kimo, you did say like you grew up eating rice, a lot of rice, right? And that was just like a normal thing for you.
It was a
Yeah,
normal
me
thing,
too.
man. My grandfather had to have his rice every day. Um,
Wow.
we still on Fridays here in Orangeburg.
Hmm.
Yeah, man.
My wife is Gullah Geechee. She's from her
Yeah,
grandma from Charleston. Man, we have fish and rice every Friday, just about different
Wow.
types
yeah,
of fish. But this is what we do. We known for our seafood here. We have them low country bowls. We have all kind of chicken purloo and
Mhm.
different types of rice dishes. Man, it's still very popular here.
You
Still
know,
Yeah,
very.
that's, oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. Almost every week for my family, we have rice, man. Like you gotta have some type of rice to go with meat and the vegetables you eating, man. Like, that's
yeah,
that African component that
Yeah.
wasn't
yeah.
limited to just the lower low country or sea islands. That was extended all over the South, but particularly in Orangeburg.
Mm.
Like that's our
Absolutely.
lived experience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see,
right.
I,
Especially when you look at like the kind of things that we enjoy. Rice pudding. You
Man,
can't have without rice pudding. Rice is
man,
there regardless. Rice crispy cakes, all that shit,
mhm.
man. So
man,
we
to tell you
love
the
rice.
truth, man, my breakfast this morning was rice and beans, man.
Already, see,
Guess what I ate?
Already.
Guess
That's
what I
what I
ate?
ate
Guess
this
what?
morning for breakfast.
Baba, guess what I ate? Egg rice,
Yeah.
rice
indeed.
and toast.
Yeah.
You, you know,
So
see
we
this
do this every
again.
day.
I want everybody to understand this is one of the reasons why I really love their show and what they're doing is the authenticity and real history and real cultural context that you get. And every episode is like is like a family reunion of sorts, you know, where you
Yeah.
know everybody gets together and has these types of conversations. So again, but you guys kind of mentioned something that has been uh one of the things that I've been interested in a lot recently. I read the book, and there's obviously a documentary series on different African retentions within food, High on the Hog, right? And
Yeah.
it's a great book. And then there's also some other books I haven't read, but I see them, and I want to eventually get to them. But when we talk about Gullah culture and food and cooking styles. Are there, what are some of the distinct things as far as like, you know, food and cooking styles that we can find in Gullah culture?
You do it. You probably do it where you at right now, man. Right here in Orangeburg, man. We grill. We grill
Bar-
every weekend.
barbecue.
We
Yeah,
Barbecue.
barbecue. We
yeah, yeah,
grill.
yeah.
Them boys. Them boys. I'm not a big. I'm not a big pork eater per se.
Mhm.
But I have friends who like that pulled pork and rice. Man, I got friends who still coon hunt, who
Yeah.
still spear hunt, and they mix all that stuff up with the rice or the grits.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
that's one of the most distinctive thing is the grilling, man. I have
Mm.
friends, I got my homies, man. Just about every weekend, somewhere somebody
Something is on the
is
grill,
lighting
right?
up a grill.
Right.
Yeah, I could
Out in the
say,
country, out in the country, they always lighting up a grill, man. And my wife will be upset if I don't fire up that grill at least once a week.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would say personally, man, based on an oral account that my grandfather gave, like what his mother would do, like after they would cook rice, they would eat the burnt bottom part of the
Mm,
rice, and
Yeah.
that's common all throughout the diaspora, and I have yet to find
Yeah.
any accounts. I know I want to hear somebody say it, and I know for a fact that that's a strong African connection right there, and I have yet to find any accounts of that done elsewhere in the South, but in South Carolina.
Mm.
The other thing is the pot liquor, man. After you finish
mm,
cooking greens or whatever, man.
yeah,
My
Yeah.
grandmother,
yeah.
we had to drink that pot liquor so we
Yeah.
wouldn't get, to keep us healthy, so we wouldn't get sick.
Absolutely.
My grandmother was like the family doctor or
Good
conjure
work.
woman, whatever you want to call her. But yeah, we had to we did those type of things to eat healthy so we wouldn't get sick. That pot liquor is very important. Hopping John,
Mm,
that's the peas and rice mix, man.
mhm,
You know what, too? I think there was different forms of diet, too, because, like, my mom, she had a bunch of kids, so she know how to cook for a whole big group.
mhm,
She's always
That
cooking
yeah,
for a whole big group. So I noticed that the women in our culture, they know how to like do culinary arts. They know how to cook for big populations.
yes.
So
to
they
strip.
like big pot cooking, right?
Mhm,
And then on top of that, my mom used to literally go down south to get certain things that we could have in our kitchen in Pennsylvania. One would be pudding, which is
mhm,
like a type of grounded up pig,
Sausage and rice, yeah.
pig remains, right?
mhm,
Scrapple, collard greens. It's certain stuff that I remember eating a lot of. And then also there was always rice
mhm,
with a soup. It was always
mm,
rice and soup, rice and the soup. So my mom would take like neck bones and all this stuff and put it in one pot and just
mhm,
put everything together.
mhm.
And then we're eating on top of white rice. It's
Indeed.
like,
You know what though? You know what though? That was a way for my mother. She cooked big to stretch out the food budget.
Mm,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
mm.
So she made a pot. She made a big pot of rice or beans or whatever. That had to last us maybe 2 or 3 days.
that's right.
We would eat off of that just so she could save some money and stretch out that food budget.
You
That's
know,
right.
it's funny because and you can watch. Like I was watching it's like one of those food shows, and where one of those guys, he goes all over the world eating different foods from different cultures, and a lot of the stuff you're describing. Um, have seen, him be in different places in West Africa and them doing the same thing, right?
Mm.
And um, one thing that I learned from you guys that I did not know, and with my roots being from North Carolina, right? I always assumed that there was never a Gullah presence in North Carolina, that it was only relegated to South Carolina and Georgia.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
are there Gullah Geechee in North Carolina and Florida, maybe?
Yes,
Yes,
Oh
yes,
yes.
yes,
Wow.
Yes.
absolutely,
absolutely.
absolutely,
You
man. I
gotta
was
remember,
far.
you gotta remember that these states started at the coast. All
Hmm.
of them started with settlements at the coast, right? And all those settlements had connections to the African trade and to the Caribbean trade.
Mm,
These are where they brought Africans into.
hmm,
You know what
hmm.
I mean? And so North Carolina, they recognize it going all the way up to Wilmington to Jacksonville. We
Wow.
recognize it going all the way up maybe into Virginia if you're talking about culture, right?
Hmm.
You talking about maroon living. You talking about how many groups that wasn't enslaved, how many groups was out in the bushes,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Nobody talk about that culture, but absolutely, coastal North Carolina was Gullah Geechee enclaves. But you got to realize too that we migrated. Everybody migrated. The white man, the black man, everybody migrated from those coastal areas, inland
Mm, mm.
into into those states and then beyond. And so, yeah, North Carolina is definitely there.
Co-
Yeah,
Florida
co-
is definitely there as well.
Man,
absolutely,
culture
man.
goes where the people go, man.
There you go. I was just
It
about to say
goes. It
that.
goes where the people go. You traveling, like for me myself, I said I was in New York, but I was born here in South Carolina. When I got up to New York, it was just like being in Orangeburg because
Mm,
everybody was from here, and
hmm.
Same culture.
we was eating the same foods and doing the same type of things, listening to the same type of music, just like everybody was doing back down south. So it
That's
really
right.
was no different for me when I got there, except for the people who were native New Yorkers, but around my family and peoples and friends and everything, it was just like being home. It was no
Yeah,
different. We did
Mm,
the same thing. We was doing the same things we were doing down south.
that's
Yeah,
right.
man. And even in North Carolina, I would say there's a strong a confluence that you can trace back to
mm,
Jamaica through the Junkanoo Festival, man.
mm.
That was held in Wilmington, Edenton, and a few other spots, man. And that's
New
a
Bern.
strong
Yeah.
cultural retention right there, man.
Wow.
And
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
see, also, man, see us ourselves. We have made connected with people from all around the area, from all around the tri-state area, from Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. I mean, I myself, man, I got peoples everywhere, man. So
Yeah,
I just came back from Jacksonville, and Jacksonville has a big, huge Gullah Geechee
that's
um,
right.
culture, history,
Really?
Right.
traditions. Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
I connected with a brand new cousin down there from Jacksonville. Found her
Mm,
through ancestry. Got to
mm.
see her when I was down there, and we had never met each other before. So it was fun for me to give her that part of her history and
Mm.
show
Yeah,
her how me and her connect. And we blood, and we didn't even know it. And it's a close connection as well.
absolutely. I want to, hey, brother Rakim, I want to emphasize too that um, we have suffered ethnic erasure.
Yes.
We have suffered ethnic erasure, meaning that there was a time where when our grandparents would open their mouth, everybody would know they was Geechee.
Hmm.
But now today we open our mouths and our language has been changed through integration, through
Hmm.
English education, and now we don't necessarily speak like our ancestors. And some of us, we far away from them culturally. And
Yeah.
so we still the descendants though. So
Hmm.
we're identifying first and foremost as descendants, even if we don't practice the culture or speak the language of our ancestors. That still makes us who we are, and that's what I mean by ethnic erasure. We all know that there's supposed to be a diaspora of every population. You
Hmm.
got the home base, then you got the people who move away,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we call our diaspora the Gullah spora,
Mm.
right? Because
Right.
there's a Gullah spora all across America. When you go and research the Great Migration, you realize that the same people who migrated from the Low Country into Columbia, into Orangeburg, most of them, many of them, maybe about half of them, took off to D.C., took off to Baltimore, took off to Philadelphia, took off to New York, and right now they have descendants who don't even know where they come from.
Mm.
And so that's why our work is so important because we're waking the descendants up.
You know,
That, that,
yeah, y'all work is very important, very powerful, and I think that's one of the contexts that I want people to understand when watching this is there is a Gullah diaspora, and just because you may not live in low country does not mean you don't have any ancestry that ties you back to being Gullah.
Yeah.
you never know, man. With this work we do, I've had cousins, people who reach out to me from as far as Louisiana, as
Wow.
far
That's
as
right.
Mississippi. And this one particular cousin, she was born in New Orleans, in Louisiana. She does a lot of research herself. Had no idea that she had so much family here in South Carolina.
Mm,
Matter of
that's a
fact,
good point.
her roots are deeper here in South Carolina
Mm,
than where she was actually born, because her ancestors were taken from here
hmm.
and transported
Over there.
through probably through forced migration, with the domestic slave trade. You know,
Absolutely.
somebody
Absolutely.
was sold, and now we're making those connections all over again. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
See, I
And
think that's a great point that Baba Kimo mentioned is
Mm,
the forced separation, not just you know, us leaving and migrating on our own, but being sold off to other places.
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exactly that's
We're
exactly
talking.
what happened, man.
We're documenting the evidence of the internal slave trade.
Hmm.
We are
Hmm.
documenting the evidence of the westward expansion of our bloodlines.
Mm,
And so you got to remember, we're talking about Orangeburg and we're talking about South Carolina here. South Carolina was the destination for the majority, for 40 to 50% of the Africans brought into the United States of America,
hmm.
right? That's just a clear fact. So when they get there, what do? They begin to form culture among themselves.
Yes.
And then as those colonies and their borders expand, so does the culture, right? And
Yeah,
so
that's
you got
right.
to realize that Orangeburg will be considered one of the counties where you would call it like a seed county. Because when you
Mm,
check our DNA, we have genetic relatives all across America. But if you do the same thing for African who don't have an Orangeburg or a South Carolina connection, they might be very limited to one region in the
hmm.
people they're connected to.
Okay.
But the Orangeburg connections is literally all across America.
So when we talk about Orangeburg, and again, why this uh, work that you guys are doing is because, well, one of the important things for me is the recognition of Orangeburg and Gullah Geechee culture and ancestry there, and so I noticed, and I know just from watching you guys' show and different research things that you guys have even shared with me. When we look at the city of Orangeburg in totality, right? Um, and can you guys, I guess, talk about some of the history and interesting things that you found during your research of
Yeah,
Orangeburg, and and Black folks within Orangeburg? Because I think that, I mean, that's fascinating for me. You know.
I,
I mean, me
I think we
personally,
got.
man, I found like a deep sense of community and
Mm,
organization
mm,
there. Like, that's something
Yeah,
like people don't really touch on. Like when people think of Orangeburg, they just think about the Orangeburg massacre, which is very important.
hmm.
But of course, next to that trauma, man, you got contributions and achievements from African Americans in Orangeburg, man, that need to be told about. Coming from my own personal area where you had black men organizing, buying land through their Prince Hall Freemasonry connections and things of that
Wow,
sort.
wow.
yeah. And then another good thing about it is, you know, the black community of Orangeburg during enslavement, the majority of us were enslaved on large plantations.
Hmm.
Yeah,
In some places, you have a large African population, but there's small plantation communities. But in Orangeburg, you had plantations with 300, 400, 500 Africans there, and within those populations was families being cultivated. And so, yeah, maybe one person or two people might have got sold off, but the bulk of the family remained. And
Hmm.
after emancipation, we had a majority.
Yeah.
And in Orangeburg, they was terrified of us. We was wilding, so we was able to get us some land, get us some areas, that we established our first freedmen communities there. And then, you know, in establishing the communities, we establishing the churches, we establishing the schools. You know what I'm saying? We building the farms, we starting the businesses, you know, the pharmacies. And so when we go back and see our ancestors, they were the ones who were doing this. They were the ones who was farming at the state. They were the ones with the pharmacies. They were the ones, and I'm like, wow, this is my great uncle. Dang, this is my great grandpa. And so Orangeburg history is like the majority of people in Orangeburg have a connection to Orangeburg. And most people won't go there unless they got a connection to the burg. And so the culture is very closed, is very preserved, and is very, very religious, very, very Christian. But at the same time, the church has always been a pillar in the community.
Of the community. For me, myself, my grandfather's, he found his church. His church came out of the Bush Harbor, and now his church has been in existence maybe 150, 160 years.
Yeah, 160.
Those churches are a lot of, and they're like cultural centers preserving a lot of our history, man. People don't understand that.
We've been able to find our first generation ancestors that were building these churches. Dom's ancestor, Dom is a Yoruba descendant. His ancestor church is still standing in Denmark, South Carolina.
Wow.
My grandfather's church is still standing in Cope. Me and Chief have a church where our ancestors descend from, Canaan. That's still standing. That church has been around for over 100 years. And so, and people who first built and started these churches were first generation Africans.
Yeah. Hey, Rakim, you know how important that is? You know how significant that is? Because Orangeburg received almost 200 of the Wanderers 3 years before the Civil War began. There were, Dom has done research and found Africans documented on the census in 1880 and 1870 that was documented 60 years old, 70 years old, with their children and their children's children. So it's documented already that we were Africans in Orangeburg, and that the culture produced our freedom communities, our freedmen communities. So when you went in them churches back then, it wasn't like you was going to what you're going to now. Back then, you was going, like you said, into the complete culture. Everybody belonged to a church because every family belonged to a church. You understand? So we began Reconstruction with the church as the center, the spiritual center of the community. Very, very powerful. And today you'll find that those churches are still populated by the same families. If you go check those churches right now, the same surnames is still there.
Wow.
And those families have been mixing the same family has been mixing over the generations.
Wow.
So all three of us are connected, some by DNA and some by marriage. Well, both really. It's by DNA and marriage. I mean, Dom has people who has married into my direct paternal line. Me and Chief are third cousins. So we share direct ancestry. And it's been happening like that for since they brought us here.
I would go as far as before we even got on the boat, probably in our own personal villages and kingdoms, man. Like it's like straight as the quote master, but you know, put me on game endogamy, man. Like generational people being enslaved together, going to church together, building community together, barbershops together, all of that.
There is a possibility. There's a strong possibility that some of us probably even knew each other in Africa.
There you go.
The more I research, the more I dig.
Mic drop.
The more I research, the more I dig. You can see that there is a strong possibility that I know that we all came from the same areas. I know that for a fact. Just based on my DNA alone, with the matches we found. So like I say, it's a very strong possibility.
Absolutely. In fact, Kimo, even the case of the Wanderers proves it. Even the case of just the Wanderers proves it. But just imagine that they didn't bring nobody from Africa alone on the ship.
No.
And if you understand how Africans were enslaved and exchanged on the continent and what and why, you realize that it was whole villages cleared out. It was whole communities cleared out. And if a whole community would have been put on the boat with several other communities and they all end up over here, if they ain't on the same plantation, they're gonna be nearby.
Mm.
And then when you look and you see that people were running away and they was putting ads in the newspaper to catch them, you know where they was always running? To their family.
Wow.
So they was always running to their relative in another county or somebody else. They was always running. They would run from one plantation and go try to get to their family because they knew who they were.
Sometimes they were leaving these different plantations to go visit a loved one, or they might have had a wife or children on a different plantation, but somehow we were still able to maintain that connection.
That kinship.
That kinship. Yeah.
I can give you an example of 2 runaway advertisements where someone was enslaved in Orangeburg, where they would run away from that plantation in Orangeburg just to go to Charleston to visit or find loved ones. So that's telling you right there that strong Gullah Geechee African connection was maintained, man.
Wow.
That's right.
And I'm glad and I'm thankful for y'all, because most people would see that and just think that they're looking at a ad to get a reward for an enslaved African who ran away, but not see the context and what that is even saying. You know what I'm saying? And so I appreciate y'all for that. I was watching a documentary, and I don't even think it was about Gullah Geechee culture per se, but I think it was about like the black church, right? But they were talking to a Gullah family. I'm not sure where exactly they were living, but they were showing that. I wanted to see if you guys had ever heard of this or seen any of this in your research, but they were showing that some of their ancestors that were brought here, because they already had, were able to maintain these family cemeteries for a long time. And again, like the churches you mentioned, some of those cemeteries and it preserves so much history, right? But they were talking about that some of their ancestors, their Gullah ancestors, were Muslims, and I had never heard of anything like that before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You talking about one of Dr. Gates' documentaries?
I think that might have been Black Church.
Black Church.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
So you saw it too?
I watched all the documentaries.
Yeah, me too.
I tell you what, right?
We still have the cemeteries in this area that go back to the beginning. I know where our ancestral cemeteries are. I still go and visit them, and I go pour libations to them on a regular basis. So I know where the Good Hope Cemetery is. I know where the Canaan Cemetery is. I know where the Shady Grove Cemetery is. I know where all these different cemeteries. I was lucky enough. I'm a little bit older than Chief and Dominic, and I'm lucky enough to have known my grandfather and my grandparents who told me these stories. I was blessed to have known 4 of my great grandmothers, and so they wasn't necessarily trying to pour the knowledge into me, but it's, like I say, when you're around them and you grow up with it, it just naturally falls into you. And so, like I said, I was blessed to have known. I was blessed to have known people who knew people who were enslaved.
Right.
Yeah, even for my family, man, like what we'll do annually almost, we'll go to the grave, because every family has its own grave plot at the church. We'll go there and clean those plots off. So we might be cleaning off great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents.
I just spent the weekend doing that, cleaning off family cemetery.
We do that. We do that as well. We have in our church, in my family's church in Bahama, North Carolina. There's it was built with money that they had came together as a community, saved from sharecropping, and they still have all of that history documented. A lot of my ancestors on my mother's side are buried there, and it's an amazing piece of history that we have been able to preserve because people don't often look at a cemetery that way, right? There's this negative and bad connotation with graveyards and cemeteries and stuff, but when we maintain, I mean, it's very African. Like that's one of the African retentions that I don't think we often talk about. is our maintenance
Yeah.
of these
Very,
cemeteries from the
very
jump,
well
and even the stuff that we find like cowrie shells and stuff like that at these
said.
cemeteries. Like
Hmm.
it's amazing.
Even the
You
funerary
know,
practice.
I get such a
Uh,
powerful feeling when I go to the cemetery and pour libations. It's like they're talking to me. I can feel their presence whenever I go.
Yeah,
Mm,
man. Yeah, man.
mm,
And,
indeed. What were you saying, Dominique?
but you
yeah,
was
even the funerary practices, man. Like for instance, when I was born, my great grandfather died the same year. I was died the same year, and when I was at this funeral, they would cross. They took me and they crossed me over his grave.
Wow.
It's called shaking off the spirit, or some people might say crossing the baby over the grave, but that's a
yeah.
strong West African
Wow.
religion, man. You
Wow.
can
Gone.
find that all over the
Woo.
diaspora as well.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah.
again.
You know,
Yeah, keep going.
um, you asked about Islam as well.
Hmm.
Um, the Europeans admit that up to 30% of the Africans who was brought to America were Muslims.
Hmm.
The Europeans admit 30%. So you know it's more than that. If
Right.
they admit 30%, you know how they know.
Right.
How they know
Right.
Muslim and who ain't Muslim, right? And so, it was enough for them to at least admit 30%. And so we have the accounts of the Muslims who came.
Hmm.
In fact, one of the founding elders of the Gullah Nation of North America was a direct descendant of
Wow.
Balali Muhammad from Sapelo Island, Baba Howard Hillary. And he was really emphasizing the Islamic tradition, the Islamic influence and contribution to Gullah Geechee culture.
Hmm.
Because a lot of those people, a lot of the language that's retained was being
Hmm.
spoken by people who believed in Islam.
Mm.
When when you realize that within the culture there were certain people who could count to 20 in the Fula language, and Fulas
Mm.
are Muslim. You know what
Wow.
I'm saying? And then when you look at the Manding language, think about Mandinkas in Mali, it's obvious that
Yeah.
many of them people would have been Muslims, in Africa.
Hmm.
So Balali Muhammad is a good case because he was in what they call Futa Jalon studying when he was captured. Him, his wife, they was having a political dispute, and him and his wife was captured during that time and
Hmm.
sold into slavery. But him and his family was never separated from each other. They ended up on a plantation owned by a man named Thomas Spalding on Sapelo Island, and he allowed for them to be Muslim on the plantation. So he
Mm.
had 80 Muslims on the plantation with him, and when Spalding bought the land that he had, he bought 300 Africans directly from Sierra Leone from Henry Lawrence to make the seed population of Sapelo Island.
Wow.
And so many of them were Muslims because this region was already flooded with Islam.
You know,
And
like
to
when.
take it on a more personal level,
Mhm.
we have one cousin that we connected with. Her family has been Muslim
Mm.
for forever, for Thea.
Wow.
Her family, and now none of, well, we wasn't, well, I'll put it like this. The cousins that are connected to her now, they're all Christian now.
Hmm.
They all go to these Christian churches. But before then, that first generation African, he was Muslim. He had to be. Fatia and her family are still Muslim, and they've been Muslim
Absolutely,
since
absolutely.
forever.
In fact, if you observe African American religion within the church,
Hmm.
you can see the influence of Islam. Because if you ever
Mm.
went to a mosque
Hmm.
and you went to a cook bar and
Hmm.
you listened to a black Muslim preach the Quran to you,
Hmm.
you'd be like, man, wait a minute, this
Hmm.
sounds familiar. The
Mm.
style,
Hmm.
the emphasis on God, the
Hmm.
way our theology, it crossed over too.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
like I've
theology.
found firsthand accounts in the WPA of elders saying that there was an African preacher, like born and raised in Africa, preaching to them, and the way in which they would preach. Like they would always speak highly, say, "Oh, this preacher here is very rhythmic," or he claps his
Mm.
hands every time he does a sermon. So that cultural transference.
I
Yeah,
think I'm glad y'all mentioned that too, because like again, these this type of cultural transference is something that often um is not detected by people who don't have the eye to see it. You know what I'm saying? And one of the important things that y'all are doing is showing people like here, this is not just something that happened by osmosis. The way these preachers are preaching, the way these imams are teaching
yeah,
is very African and is
Very.
rooted. You know what I'm saying? And one thing that I wanted to kind of ask you guys about, and because Baba Chemo was he shared this the other day, and I know. And again, before we even go there, first off, I would like to just let y'all know that um, I had been I had been probably doing the research on my own family history for about 10 years. Sometimes I would take a few months break or whatever because it kind of,
It
like,
can get to you. Yeah.
yeah. But one thing that, I appreciate about y'all is the emphasis that y'all continue to put on knowing your ancestors' names, right? If you can know what their trade was, knowing that, and having this type of history, because I remember, I was, we talk a lot about knowledge itself, and and people have these different ideas about, what quote unquote God means to them or what spirituality means to them, but knowledge itself begins with, now I'm starting to understand, it begins with knowing who you and where you come from. And
Exactly.
there are so many people who can tell you anything about religion, and but they can't tell you who their grandmother's grandmother was, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And one thing that I was blessed to get me started on doing my ancestry was, my grandmother had, uh, well, she's still here, and but my grandmother has records of her. She had records of her grandparents' name and where they lived, like where they were enslaved, and then she had even more extensive records of my grandfather, who's no longer here, of the actual plantation he came from,
Mm.
the his great great grandparents who were
Wow.
enslaved, the 8 children that they had,
Mm.
and then all of their children. And so when I began to plug that into ancestry.com, it gave me a really good start, in order to be able to get going. And one thing that Baba Chemo posted the other day, and it was something that on some branches of my tree I am still fighting with. On other branches I have been able to get further. But the 1870 brick wall, right? Can
Yeah.
y'all talk to the people who are just now getting into their ancestry about what that brick wall is?
Yeah. Yeah. Um. So during slavery, whenever they documented enslaved Africans, they didn't document us with surnames or last names. And sometimes they didn't document us with names at all. We would
Mm,
just be counted as a person of a certain age or a certain sex on
mm,
the census records.
mm,
So let's say that a slaveholder owned or held 20 Africans in bondage. On his census, it would say have his name, and then it would have like maybe the age and the sex of the 20 Africans, but it
mm,
wouldn't have their names. It wouldn't say it was such and such or such and such. So we didn't have surnames. If
mm,
you wasn't a free man,
mm.
you didn't have a surname.
Right.
And so only emancipation, 1865, the Freedmen Bureau comes through. They're putting us in the contracts. Who we getting the contracts with? Mainly with our former enslaver.
Mm,
Whose whose names do we know in order to
mm.
take? Our
Right.
former
Former
enslaver.
enslaver. Right.
So we take their names and we stayed largely where we were at
Mm,
for that first 12, 15 years. People kind of stayed put. During Reconstruction, it wasn't a whole bunch of mass moving. They was building political power. They was pursuing state power at that time. It was better to stay put and concentrate.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In particular areas.
Because we had the majority in some cities, like you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Well, you think about it like this: South Carolina had a black majority since 1807.
Mm,
South Carolina and Georgia were black majorities during slavery. The majority of people speaking any language was black people during slavery in South Carolina and Georgia. That's
mm,
why the African influence is so dominant, even on the white culture. the white people got traits from African traditions. They don't know where it come from. We have to tell them. We have to tell them, yo, you can't do that. You disrespecting our ancestors. But in reality, they got it from our ancestors.
Wow.
You understand?
Generations back.
Wow. Wow.
Generations back, man. You even had people in the 1800s and late 1700s doing write-ups about, oh, our white colonists are picking up the Negro dialect. They're saying words like okra, tote, bitty, common terms that we use today in Orangeburg, man. So
Yeah,
You know,
and then
And another thing is, man, we don't just study our own particular families. We study the enslavers' families as well.
oh yeah.
When you know the enslavers' surname, most times you're going to find us right around in that same area. So we made it our business to study the Buckra also. I mean,
Absolutely.
I know who some of their descendants are right here in Orangeburg, and they know me.
yeah.
And they don't like me because they know I know stuff about their family that they don't want to be known. But and I believe me, I have told more than one that you know who you talking to. You know, I know who you are.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Right, Baba. Get right.
Hey, so 1870 was the first official census that African people was recorded on after emancipation. Not everybody was on the 1870 census. If you got an ancestor on the 1870 census, you're lucky.
I have a few. I found.
Yeah, 1880 was more prominent. And if you know, there wasn't no 1890. You got to go all the way up to 1900 from 1880. You won't find an 1890 census.
Why is
And
that?
so,
Why is that? I didn't notice that.
All the documents.
I'm not really sure of the reason.
From my limited understanding, some of the documents, because there was a census taken, but a lot of documents got lost in a fire.
Federal fire, right?
A lot of records were destroyed.
Wow.
A lot of records were destroyed.
Wow.
And that's the part that we rebuilding building back up right now. A lot of people don't know that when Sherman came through Orangeburg and through Columbia, he was wiping everything out. He burnt the courthouse down. You know, so and one thing, some of this I got from a white man. He was telling me some of the records have been destroyed. He was the first one to tell me that because I couldn't get over that 1870 brick wall.
So it's challenging.
How you get through the brick wall? You get through the brick wall by DNA testing. Once you do that DNA testing, that's what opened up the floodgates for me.
Okay.
And then I started connecting the dots orally because my grandmother told me that her people came from Africa. She didn't know. She couldn't tell me exactly where, but I was able to find out.
I'm glad you said, hold on, Baba Kimo. Let's stay there right there because we're living in a time now where everybody say their grandma told them they was Cherokee.
Oh no! Hey, I will tell you this, man. I will tell you this. The same. My grandma that I'm talking about. There was a rumor in her family that we were Indian, and I do have 1%. Just 1%, which ain't even really enough to count as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of those people, many times when you say you got high cheekbones or long hair, that's African traits as well, man.
Right.
Either that's African by way of Fulani, Malagasy, or whichever, or that's on the European side. Ain't even got Quanto Pocahontas, man.
Right.
Listen, they out here too, bro. That look is out here too.
Right.
The Ethiopian, that Fulani look is out here too. It's just, they look like they're related. It look like it's the same people actually. And so, we got all different types when it comes to that. One aspect that I want to elaborate on too as well is that other than the DNA, you also have the census records. Now, you can use the 1870 or the 1880, and like for instance, I can find my ancestor being born in 1817 from the 1880 census.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I also can find out what his name was, and I can say, well, damn, we lived over here. Let me go find any white folk with that name in the area. That might get me close to a plantation. I might find other black folk with the same name. And so you kind of trace the names It let you know, and then sometimes you'll be lucky to find even the ship that your ancestors came over on, because
Wow.
all the Europeans have origins in America. They didn't all show up at one time.
Hmm.
When they first showed up, a lot of them started buying people, and all that stuff was documented. Their
Hmm.
taxes were documented. In their wills can help you break through as well. The slaveholders' wills had names a lot
Hmm.
of times. It would say old Tom or young Tom, you know, or old Edna or young Edna. You know, it would say the names more in the family document. So you also have
Oh yeah,
um,
that family Bible has some records in it too.
absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sure.
The churches, the local historical societies, they have immense information.
I
Mm.
tell you one thing that's very important. If your ancestor was a USCT vet, those pension files,
That's
those
Mm.
right.
pension files are very important. Sometimes they might tell you, so and so might tell you he came from this plantation,
Hmm.
or his name used to be such and such.
Yeah.
He had to change his name because of the military chief's
Wow.
And those
ancestors.
muster rolls as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
This book right here,
Hmm.
this is the regiment that my ancestor was in, the 128th Regiment.
Wow.
And it was a name changing regiment. Almost everybody in this regiment borrowed an identity while they served and
And a
then changed
different.
their name after service. So this dude had to write this book from military pension records to find out who these people really was before they enlisted in the military. And he got all these entries, a bunch of them from Orangeburg. And so the reason why I mention that is because everybody from this was from Orangeburg area and from Columbia. They was from South Carolina. This whole regiment was South Carolina man,
Wow.
and a lot of them got freed for the first time in 1865 during Tecumseh Sherman's march through South Carolina. And so the people who followed his army and set fire to everything and ravaged the countryside, a lot of them went and joined the army afterwards.
Mm.
My ancestor was one of them, and he was a part of a group of them that ended up rebelling within the military. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Straight
And
guerrilla fighters, man.
something else for you, Raheem. Just so I just want to mention this as well. Like my ancestor, when he first, his first set of children, a lot of them moved to North Carolina. A
Wow.
lot of them, and they married up there. I got a whole
yeah,
bunch of cousins from that
yeah,
North Carolina
You know,
area.
yeah, yeah. I gotta start doing. I gotta. At first I thought it might have just been talk, right? But my grandfather used to say that my grandma was Geechee.
Oh man, see, it's little nuggets like
But
that, man.
I
Look
just
into
thought.
that.
Hey,
I.
bro, listen.
Mhm.
Hey, Rakeem, listen, right? Let me tell you something about Geechee, right? Geechee, Geechee is not something that you would say to somebody just 2 generations ago.
Mhm.
Gullah and Geechee were terms that were affiliated with like backwardsness or
Oh, okay. Hmm.
primitiveness or
Hmm.
slavery, right?
Hmm.
And so if somebody tells you, yeah, your grandmama was Geechee,
Hmm.
they try and tell you that she had cultural attributes that align her with that group. Now she might have been like, "Don't call me that,"
Hmm.
but he
Hmm.
telling you that she had these
Yeah,
characteristics.
she did because she would say, "Don't call me that," because I think sometimes it was kind of looked at as like a pejorative, right?
It was.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so at one time, those were fighting words. When
Yeah.
I
Oh
first
yeah,
when I first got to Brooklyn, when I first got to New York, man, and people said I was Geechee, we was ready to scrap.
Right,
oh
right,
yeah,
We
right,
was ready
oh
to
yeah,
scrap, man, because
right.
of the way I had to teach myself how to talk like a New Yorker.
Mm.
When I left the country, I
Hmm.
had that Geechee accent, I had that country boy accent, and
Hmm.
people made fun of me for that.
Hmm.
And
yeah.
even still, after I lived in New York for a while and came back down south, my own cousins would say to me, "Oh man, you trying to talk proper?
Right.
Yeah.
You ain't one of us no more." So I had to go. I was getting it both ways from the people up north and from the ones down south because
You
they
know,
thought I was trying to be quote unquote
So
talk
so
like you
so
white or whatever.
let me ask you this, guys. So with
important.
my grandfather telling my grandma that, and then that was because my mom, she I don't know why, but she tells me this all the time, right? And maybe it's my cue to do a little bit more research, right? But so if All right, so they were in Laurinburg, North Carolina, which I believe is on the coast, not the coast, but the state line between North Carolina and South Carolina. But just because they
Yeah,
were in Laurinburg does not mean that that's where they originated from, right? Like, because that's
right,
I think
That's
that's
right.
where I would stop. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we get to
right,
Laurinburg, and there's not really a Gullah presence here, but that doesn't mean that that was their original drop off.
right, right,
That's right. That's
right.
right.
And
And
then
I would go as
That's
far as to say, man, the same way as I applied to South Carolina, the the roots of it may be on the coast of Sea Islands, but the branches extend inland, man. So
that's
Mm,
right,
that goes for
that's
not just
right,
South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina.
wow.
that's
I
right,
say it
right.
again. Culture goes where the people go.
Mm,
Yes,
And,
mm,
Take
sir.
mm,
your culture
that's
with
what you're looking for. That's what
mhm,
you're looking for. You're not looking for necessarily an area, not at this day and time.
mhm,
You're looking for the preservation of the culture in your family,
mhm.
knowledge, the memory of people being that. And then also, of course, the genealogy. The genealogy is going to connect you to the land.
Yeah.
You can go back, but you can find out more. You can find out who enslaved that lineage of your family.
Mhm,
What was their history? What was their movements? Because, like for instance, we have a family called the Jamison family in Orangeburg history, right?
mhm,
But only in the 1800s did they move from Berks County, Pennsylvania. So they were
mm.
relatively new there.
Right.
In Orangeburg, you had a group of internetwork families called the Allied Families of Orangeburg District.
Mhm,
Now, Orangeburg was a district from 1768 to 1868. For the last 100 years, for 100 years straight, Orangeburg was a district that today would include multiple counties within its map,
mm,
right?
mhm,
Very, very important to understand, right? And so that district was ruled by the same people who held us in bondage. The people who held us in bondage was the politicians, they was the police, they was the lawyers, they was the
Judges.
doctors back then. And so they are proud of it. They have books written about it. They're
mhm,
proud. Oh, yeah, the Allied families. A lot of these Allied families are also the pioneering families of Alabama and Mississippi.
mm,
And
yeah.
so it's a lot of history here, bro. And then so you have people coming from the north during the internal slave trade, people leaving Virginia, coming down, buying land in South Carolina, buying land in Alabama, bringing Africans with them,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And Orangeburg was like a hub for that activity. You had
Wow.
to pass through Orangeburg to get through Georgia in order to get to Alabama. It was a whole route.
Mm,
A
And
lot of
and
a lot of people stayed there and they married into the Allied families. The Jamison married into the Allied families. You got others, the Cleckley family. They marry into the Allied families. The Allied families go all the way back to the original settlers of Orangeburg.
wow.
Original
Wow.
Dutch settlers.
then you also got to remember that when they moved, when they say they live in South Carolina or going to Mississippi and Alabama or wherever, they took their enslaved people with them.
That's
Mhm,
right.
mhm,
And they took
And
their culture.
that's how most of us got to where they are got to New Orleans or whatever. But they lost memory of that.
yeah.
They lost memory of that. Yeah.
But that's, I
Memory
think,
wasn't passed
again,
on.
that's part of the work that y'all are doing there is kind of being the memory keepers and reintroducing that to a new generation. And one thing that I've noticed too is um if y'all can tell me more about a lot of but I'm seeing a different Gullah nations are actually, um big on having like annual festivals where they like, and so like there's an active preservation and an active, acknowledgement of Gullah
Yeah,
Geechee culture, kind of more
yeah,
mainstream.
yeah. It's because the culture was on its way out.
Mm,
Because of modernization and migration, and also what Queen Quet calls destructionment,
mm-hmm,
which is they say it's development, but it actually destroys our culture.
mm-hmm,
It destroys our environment. And so those combinations right there have weakened the culture to the point that you don't have many native speakers anymore.
mm-hmm.
You have people who have preserved aspects of crafts, aspects of culinary arts, but you don't have the full culture being lived by a full group of people like we used to have
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And so about 20, 25 years ago, elders within the Low Country became very concerned about, yo, we got to do something to revive the culture. We got to do something to make sure that the grandbabies know that they come from this, because we was tormented for being Geechees. We was this and that, and now this generation, you see us pushing pride, Geechee pride, promoting it, right?
Yeah.
So part of the survival of a people is their festivities,
Mm-hmm.
is us coming together to enjoy our culture. So when you think about culture, right, or you think about a nation,
Mm-hmm.
every nation has a culture. They have a Puerto Rican Day parade in New York every year,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
They have the Afram in Baltimore, the African American parade in Baltimore every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what Gullah Geechees do is we have certain traditions like homecomings, family.
Mm.
We have the family reunions, of course, and then we also have festivals. So the
Mm-hmm.
festivals allow for us to do all three at the one time: promote, preserve, and protect our culture.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're doing to revitalize Gullah Geechee. So even those of us who don't know we're Geechee can take pride in it once we learn and once we identify. There's certain people who ain't Geechee, but we still want them to identify and take pride in who we are too, because we Africans first and foremost. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? It's not an isolated identity. We're not trying to be tribalists. We
Yeah.
don't want to be isolated to the islands. We want to be a part of the world population. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have what you call double standards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have some people that will recognize the Seminoles, the Africans who ran to Florida,
Yeah.
ended up all the way over in Texas as Gullah Geechee descendants. You have some that will say Michelle Obama is a Gullah Geechee descendant because they can trace her great great grandfather back to Georgetown, South Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have people within the Gullah Geechee culture who will recognize these people, but then they'll turn to us in Orangeburg and see that we have
Mm-hmm.
multiple ancestors connected to the same places, and then
Mm-hmm.
they'll beef us because of this intellectual misinformation that's been going around about who we actually are and how the culture spread. It's very, very important that we understand that we're putting our identity back together.
Oh, can you talk about some of the misinformation that has been spread that has kind of caused that? I don't want to say necessarily division, but if it is division, like on the
Yeah,
idea of, you know, Orangeburg identity.
yeah. I think the misinformation comes from really recent times.
Hmm.
Um, and really because people really wasn't concerned with Gullah Geechee. They wasn't
Hmm.
trying to read and understand it like that,
Hmm.
right? Only recent times is people really digging up and trying to become knowledgeable with this thing, right? But there were people who was already knowledgeable, people who came up in the culture before it became popular that was already leading us to this point. We always got to pay homage to those who was actively involved before we were, because they're the ones who paved the way for us to become active, right?
Hmm.
And so just because of the way that the identity became, I'll say, labeled as Gullah through, of course, the work of Dr. Lorenzo Doe Turner.
Hmm.
Dr. Lorenzo Doe Turner was a linguist. So what he focused on was the language.
Hmm. Hmm.
He didn't study the history, he studied the language. He
Right.
followed the language trail. It brought him to Sierra Leone, took him to Barbados, took him to
Wow.
Jamaica. He was able to say, this is not slave language, this is not broken English, this
Hmm.
is part of an Atlantic Creole family of languages. And then he left it at that. He didn't give the historical explanation or nothing like that. He left it there.
Hmm.
But because of that, and most of his studies was focused on the Sea Islands,
Hmm.
was focused on the Low Country, where the culture at that time was most preserved, where he could observe it and see people speaking the language, as a first language.
Hmm.
50, 100 people just sitting around talking Geechee,
Hmm.
right? He
Hmm.
could see the culture. He could see the ring shout in natural form. They're not performing. They're just having a good time at the praise house,
Yeah.
right? In the woods somewhere. So
Hmm.
he went down and observed it and documented it and archived it for us. But then future generations went back and piggybacked off of his seminal studies, right?
Hmm.
And so from day one, the idea was that this culture is an isolated culture,
Hmm.
that these people live in remote areas. And so it was the culture being studied. It was the language and the culture being studied. It was not the people. It was not the lineages. It was not the geography of the descendants.
Hmm.
That's where we come in.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you
And
know
so
what?
when you start doing this, it starts exposing how widespread the culture and the population actually is, and it
Right.
challenges the notions that the people only exist where the culture survived.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I've found two audio field recordings from the 1960s. One in which a white man is saying that Gullah on this side of Orangeburg, the eastern part of Orangeburg County, was known as Santee River Talk.
Mm.
Mm, mm.
Wow.
Some of the
You know what?
same, a lot of same terms and phrases that you would hear in the Low Country and Sea Islands were until this day still can be heard in Orangeburg.
That's right.
But you know what I was going to say? Right now we're kind of in a revival season.
Hmm.
Right now, it is revival season. Right now, you have people from up north that when they come down south, they want to see the culture. They want to feel the culture. They want to taste the culture. They want people like us to tell them
Yeah.
their family history when they come down here. When they
Mm-hmm.
come down.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
know,
and being Geechee right now, I mean, for us, it's just a part of who we are.
yeah.
But being
Way of
Geechee
life.
right now is very popular. You hear it all in the music now.
Hmm.
Everybody got boots on the ground and all this type of thing. But you know, it's popular right now, and
Absolutely.
we were able to bring um, our festival back. We were able to have our first festival this past spring, and we were surprised. Well, I was surprised that we had that many people show up that wanted to be
Yeah.
the culture and wanted to know who they are
Yeah.
and where they come from. Everybody want to
Yeah.
know where granddaddy come from, where
Yeah.
grandmama come from. How did granddaddy do this? You
Hmm.
know, like I say, right now it's revival season, and people they're connecting to their home churches, and they're getting with
Yeah.
their families. And I was at a cookout a few weeks ago, and right now, people see me as the storyteller of Orangeburg or the griot of Orangeburg,
Yeah.
so they want to ask me who is such and such cousin, who is this my real granddaddy? Where granddaddy came from? I get that a lot.
You
Yeah.
know, that's a and Baba Kimo, that's a powerful position that you have, and I think that's dope. Just the way you carrying on that tradition. One thing I remember as a youngster going to Myrtle Beach with my family, and
Yeah. I mean,
I remember seeing on like you know how like you can go into the seafood restaurants or something down there, and there's just flyers of everything that's going on, and I grabbed one,
Mhm.
and it was a Gullah Geechee festival that was happening, but it was on a different weekend. And I always said to my mom, yeah, I would like to see that. But now just having this conversation, there were probably Gullah Geechee communities in Myrtle Beach, correct?
Yeah,
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 of
Absolutely.
in the
course,
area.
That's
of course,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the zone.
most
Mm,
most definitely.
absolutely.
My wife's sister, my
mm,
wife's sister lives near Myrtle Beach, near
wow,
Conway, and
wow,
her husband is from Orangeburg, and
right.
they live up in that area. So yeah, it's a bunch. Man, we all over the state, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I consider South Carolina Geechee country.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Horry
Might as well.
County. Horry County is on the coast. It's in
Mm,
more so
Yeah.
in the upper, like I think in the PD region, but that's on the coast, man. Like, yeah,
It's
right.
right next
absolutely,
to Georgetown. It's right next to Georgetown. Look,
right
don't
next
look.
to it.
Look, during slavery, Georgetown produced more rice than any other county.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Wow. And you know that's so interesting. So next time I'm in Myrtle Beach, I'm gonna have that cultural awareness of where I'm at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
you'll be able to recognize it. Once you know that, you'll be
Uh,
able to spot it and you'll be able to recognize it. I do that with
right,
research all the time when I'm
right.
reading or even when I'm talking to people.
Hmm.
It'll spark something, and I say, "Oh yeah, we used to do it just like that, or we did that when I was."
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Dominique
Yeah.
has a knack for asking me the right questions at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to remember certain things. You know,
Hey, my
so
king.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what's interesting too is that there's a reverse migration happening in this century.
Mm.
The children and grandchildren of those who left the South
Hmm.
last century are now finding way home. And when they get
Wow.
home, they want to know where the family at.
Yeah.
Who am I?
that's me.
What you know?
That's me. I've been back. I grew up, like I say, I grew up in New York. I've been back in South Carolina for about 20 years now.
Hmm.
And a lot of my friends, a lot of family members, all of them have moved back to Orangeburg or even in surrounding areas. And so we're connecting like that as well.
Man, that's
Oh yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know also that I'm realizing that the culture, at least the Orangeburg culture, I would say,
Hmm.
man, ain't not, it ain't go nowhere. You can
Mm.
find people from Orangeburg who've been living in Philadelphia for 2 generations, and they still got that basic style.
Right, right.
They got that basic Orangeburg home training that passed down. And so when you talk about like the what do you say, the freedmen communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
They created a way to produce the kind of Africans that they wanted.
Mm.
And that system in home remained no matter
Mm-hmm.
where we went. We went to New
Hey,
York, we held the same standards. And so now a lot of people who's able to talk about this Gullah Geechee thing, we're not from the low country.
Right.
We're not from what people would call the culture, but we come from parents and households where we was exposed and inherited directly, even if it wasn't in South Carolina.
Right. Right. You
hey,
mentioned
my mother didn't cook like a New Yorker. She cooked like a country.
There you
right.
go.
So our
I'm
dinners,
glad
all our meals was just like we was growing up in the
Down
South.
south.
Baba Kimo,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you mentioned that because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is you can tell a lot of history through food
Oh yeah,
and cooking
definitely.
styles and the foods that you eat. Like there's a whole Pan-African history of how we eat certain dishes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And I think that's powerful. One thing,
Yeah, I have a large bulk of research and information on the Africanisms in our culinary traditions, man.
mm,
Like it is like going from our collective historical and cultural memory, man. It's large, man. It because you got to think. Not only when people think of the peas and rice, they just think of black eyed peas. You had
hmm
between 11 and 14 grains of different peas that came from West Africa
wow,
before 1830, man.
ooh,
And that's
wow,
only just the tip of the iceberg.
right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
man.
That's another thing too. We brought a lot of this stuff with us.
Bro,
It wouldn't
bro,
even be
listen.
here in America
I'm,
if
I'm
we
talking about
didn't
we
bring it.
I'm talking about, listen, we cook almost the same kind of dishes. I've lived here for 12 years and I've eaten traditional dishes in different cultures that I'm like, yo, this is similar to this. Yo,
Mm,
this is similar to that.
hmm
Okay,
hmm
yo, okay, this is like this.
hmm
And you can taste that our ancestors were trying to duplicate meals that they ate here. You can taste it. When you eat the meals here, you're like, okay, this is probably what they were trying to do with collard greens.
Yeah.
But they had but they didn't have the green.
Mm.
They had to use different things, right?
hmm
Yeah,
Man,
you can see it.
that's deep. You mentioned the ring shout. Um, that's one of the things that I think has been for a lot of people has have been a point of interest as far as one of the things they like to study within Gullah Geechee culture.
Yeah.
What is the ring shout for those that don't know?
The ring shout is a spiritual tradition. It's part of like what you would call our ritual dance. Because
Mm,
sometimes in Africa you have ritual dances, like only for performance times when they're trying to arouse the crowd or trying to make people enjoy that they do certain things that's already like choreographed, like a
hmm
certain dance. So the ring shout wasn't as choreographed as possible, but I believe from my studies that philosophically is directly connected to the Congolese cosmology, to the Dakinda, to the Dakinga, as well as to the concepts of what you see in West Africa. Whereas even when they call it the ring shout, there's a tradition in West Africa and other Muslim communities called the shot,
mm,
and and the shot is similar to the counterclockwise circle that people make during Hajj around the Kaaba in Mecca. If you go to
wow.
Senegal, if you go to Senegal, they have what they call the Baifal community,
hmm
and every year people from the Baifal community and people from other Muslims from around the area, they go to a pilgrimage in Senegal,
mm,
and they do the same thing. They go counterclockwise around an object.
wow.
The idea is to go counterclockwise around an object without the crossing of the feet,
Wow.
without the feet crossing like this. You joking, but you can't cross your feet. You
Wow.
understand?
Oh,
And
that was a
so,
sin.
yeah, so there's something happening is that you have someone like in the middle who's actually performing as well.
hmm
There's a spiritual performance happening, right? And so someone is leading the ring shout. Someone is carrying on. You got people playing music. They're using in our traditional ring shouts. We didn't use traditional instruments. We might use a broomstick and knock it on the ground, knock
Hmm.
it on the wood. We might use a scrub board and to make the sounds. So we use plantation instruments and tools and turn them into music
Right,
objects. You
right, right,
understand?
right, right, right.
And
Wow. Now
yeah,
on the Georgia Sea
so
Islands,
the clapping and stumping was real big. It's just arousal of the spirit. And if you can imagine, right, being on a plantation and for the last 30 days, the only time you've been off of work is maybe on a Sunday or two when you was able to go to the cracker church, right?
Hmm.
Other than that, when do you get an opportunity to dance, to shake, to release your, you know, your trauma, your stress? And so the ring shout did all of that, but there's also spiritual dimensions to what it is as well.
Indeed.
now on the Georgia Sea Islands in Low Country, according to the words of the last generations being enslaved, they had drums. They would make drums,
Yeah,
loud, animal skin stretched over. So now in that part of the in that area of Gullah and Geechee, they played drums.
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
It was
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's
You know,
important to know too, because we know obviously that the drum was outlawed on many plantations, but a lot of people are under the impression that we stopped making them, and that's
it
not
was
true.
I
Right.
did
outlawed.
a post
Yeah.
a few weeks
They were
ago.
outlawed. They were outlawed in South Carolina in 1739 after the Stolen Rebellion.
Mm.
They
Yep.
outlawed them. We could never
Hmm.
play drums again, but we still secretly did our thing. This
Hmm.
is where the
Each time you use the body.
yeah, is that ham bone,
Mm.
all that from.
Cuba.
You know what I
Wow.
mean?
My grandfather used to do grandfather used
Yeah.
to do just yeah, just bring it
Knock
back.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, ham bone.
Man, for every man for one, it's been an amazing show. I always just appreciate the time I get to build with you brothers. For let everybody know how to follow you guys and where to follow you guys, and because again the link of the show is in the description, but you guys are always dropping history on all of the platforms that you're on. So let
Yeah.
the people know where they can find you at.
You,
You go ahead, Don.
yeah, you can find me Dominic J Holiday on Facebook. Just send me a friend request or message me or whatever, and hey, we connect.
Indeed.
Uh, Same thing here. You can catch me on Facebook, IG, Mansa Fodea Jamu, just like you see it on the screen. Also, yeah, you can follow our show. You can always follow us on YouTube.
On YouTube. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Well, Baba Kimo, you find me. I'm on Facebook every day.
Yeah.
I'm doing research every day. You send me a friend request. Be surprised who reaches out to me. You'd be surprised how many cousins I have
Mm.
connected to, family members. But yeah, that's where you can find us on social media.
Indeed,
Yeah,
indeed. I would like to say just personally, man, definitely thankful for the work y'all are doing. It's very important. And make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. It's the link is in the description. And I would definitely like to invite you guys on again. These conversations are always powerful discussions, man. And so I appreciate the work that you guys are doing.
yeah, man. Thank you as well, brother. For
I had
sure.
Indeed.
fun doing it.
It's been a pleasure, brother. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Always, man. Peace.